Great. Well, it looks like we are at 12:01, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining this afternoon. My name is Maya Swope, and I am the Outreach and Volunteer Coordinator here at Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness. Friends of the Boundary Waters is committed to protecting and restoring this area that we know as the Boundary Waters. I also wanted to just take a minute to kind of recognize that this land and water that we are dedicated to protecting was originally Anishinaabe homeland and land that belonged to the Anishinaabe people. And if you're interested in learning more about that and that history, I recommend the 1854 Treaty Authority website as a really great place to kind of learn more about that. For anyone that's not familiar with our work, Friends of the Boundary Waters has been around for more than 40 years. We try to bring together kind of these ideas of people, of wilderness and community, and bring that all into kind of one organization as we work to protect the wilderness, to educate folks, and to just get people excited about the Boundary Waters. So as probably you likely know, a lot of that work is bringing people to the Boundary Waters, getting kids excited about it, teaching about the Boundary Waters. And I'm really excited to have Emily Ford here, who has been, a great adventurer in her own right, but also uses her trips to kind of be a voice for some of our programs for the Boundary Waters and raise some money for that. So that's very exciting. Before we get into the details of the presentation, just a few kind of Zoom notes. We do have a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, we will get to those at the end. Please put them in the Q&A box. There's a separate chat feature. So if you have kind of comments throughout or have any technical difficulties or anything like that, we can use the chat box for that. And I will try to respond to people throughout the presentation using that. And again, yeah, if anyone has issues, you can just shoot me a chat message and I will try to get things fixed. So we're really excited to have Emily Ford here. Emily kind of gained some fame when she hiked the Ice Age Trail in the winter last year, and has been really someone that has been spreading a great positive message about bringing people into the outdoors. She crossed the Boundary Waters this winter on skis, and so we're really excited to have her here to tell you a little bit more about that. So Emily, I will just turn it over to you.
Sweet, thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna share my screen so you're not looking at this ridiculous basement anymore. Give me one sec. Super excited to tell all of you a bit about my adventure from this past winter and being able to spend so much time in the Boundary Waters. So I just have to move stuff around on my computer screen so I can see myself. Sweet. Yeah, so I'm Emily Ford. I'm the head gardener of Glen Sheen, which is where I am right now. And I am the head gardener for 9 months out of the year. So I get December, January, February off. A lot of people ask me how and why do I take trips exclusively in the winter, and the main reason being is because that's the time I have off. And when you have just certain time off, that's just kind of you just work with what you got, right? So I was kind of fallen in love with winter, and yeah, I did the Ice Age Trail last year, skiing across the Boundary Waters this year, which is what I'm going to talk to you guys about. And I call this presentation "For You, For Me, and For Us." It's kind of the mantra that I continue to tell myself as I was skiing in the Boundary Waters this past year, and kind of figuring out, my last slide on this is kind of me figuring out why, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing the Boundary Waters? And why do I feel like this place is so special and needs to be protected? And I had a lot of time to think out there by myself because there wasn't very many people out there. So I don't, spoiler alert, I don't have a great answer as to my, it's hard to articulate the why behind, really. There's just like a gut feeling of like, this place is so important and so special. And I think you guys will you'll kind of get that feeling as I go through this. So I called ourselves a pack, though there are 4 of us. I'm, of course, a solo adventurer. But I considered the next 4 subjects the pack. The first one was me. I called myself Mama Werewolf. If any of you know Brandi Carlile, she has a song called Mama Werewolf, and it's kind of just about the ups and downs of being a protector of either your kids or those around you, and kind of how we fall short and how we don't always meet our own expectations. And we had the best intentions, but we fall short of usually our really high expectations, which was almost every single day in the Boundary Waters. It felt like, I'm not gonna lie. Of course, we have Diggins, a fan favorite and everybody's favorite. She's at home right now, but this is what she looks like. She's a 4-year-old Alaskan Husky. She comes from Beatty Family Farm, sled kennel. I acquired her last year. It was meant to be a short relationship. But after completing the Ice Age Trail, a little over a month after, I was able to keep her, and I'm super excited. So she's become my forever go-to winter adventure buddy. The next two objects are just objects. They're not even organisms, I guess. So Kongsvold, my skis. They are a hunting ski by a company called Osnes. And they're called a hunting ski because they don't have metal edges. And I guess in Norway, Sweden, when they hunt, they ski, like ski jord to hunt, they hunt with dogs. And if you don't have metal edges, it protects your dog's paws in case you're going downhill and run over their paws or something like that. So I really appreciated these skis. And Kongsvold was a hero in this entire trip. Togo, on the other hand, which is my sled, was not always a hero. I yelled at Togo at least 100 times a day, would roll over, flip over, would like collect snow and ice while we were skiing everywhere. But like, it was a necessary part of the pack. You all had that one person in your family where like, you're necessary, but man, I could like kind of live without you a little bit. If you notice in this picture, you realize there's not just packs on there. If you can see Diggin, she has her red jacket on as well, and she sometimes wished that I would carry her along, but she weighs 45 pounds and I couldn't add her to my already 150-pound sled. I'm not that strong, especially on skis. Biggest thing, right? Preparing to go, and like, how do you leave for this trip? One of the biggest things, of course, is saying goodbye to my own household, which mainly includes my other dog, Zulu, who's here with me at work. He's my summer boy. And figuring out, how do you kind of separate yourself from all of that? The next thing, of course, is what do you eat? A lot of people ask me, what do I eat? A lot of people ask me, how many calories do I eat? And I was just telling Maya before this, that I'm the absolute worst at like counting my calories. But I do like some rough math to make sure that I'm like close to 5,000 calories, right? So for breakfast, I would generally have green belly meals. A co-guide of mine told me about these, and they're like 700 calorie, really light breakfast or like meal bars. And they were perfect. I had them every day for breakfast. And for dinner, I had Mountain House meals, or like a freeze-dried meal, which everybody knows and loves. And sometimes I wish I would have had 2 of those at nighttime. Sometimes I was so hungry. Also for dinner, I invented something called the cheesy tia, which is just a quesadilla. I had a lot of time on my hands, which was just a quesadilla. And I would sprinkle Pringles on the inside and then encrust it with cinnamon sugar, which may not sound great as you're sitting here, like maybe at your desk or like on your couch, or I don't know, sitting on your bed, and you're like, I have fresh, delicious food in my fridge. But when you're out there and there's no, fresh food to be had, anything sounds great. And this was like, I like it. It was a delicacy, and it was awesome. I only give myself 10 tortillas per resupply, so I kind of like had a ration. It was like a reward after a good day. I use liquid IV for to add to my water for electrolytes and making sure I'm continually getting hydrated and wanting to drink water. I also have 1 thing of ramen every day for like my first break, and this is like such a delight, right? So it's like cold, and it's like minus whatever double digit, and I would always have just 1 thing of ramen and Diggins, and I would kind of split it. It was awesome. And I call them squishy noodles because ramen only takes, instant ramen only takes about 3 minutes to make, but I would ski for 2 hours and let it kind of just soak in there. So it was just kind of like squishy noodles. Taking Jen and Mike's hot cocoa. Of course, if you've never had it, you need to go buy it because it's delicious. It's the best hot chocolate I've ever had in my life. And I'm a hot chocolate hound, I tell you. And I would add lard to nearly everything. A pork farm called Nettle Valley Farm sponsored me with a whole bunch of lard, and it was super kind of them. Then throughout the day, eating snacks like meat snacks, M&M's, Snickers, fig bars, peanut butter pretzels, and then pretty much 1 can of sour cream and onion Pringles every single day. There's a little under 1,000 calories in 1 can of Pringles. I think it's 980 calories in a can of Pringles. It was like the best time of my life. If I could eat 1 can of Pringles for the rest of my life, I think I would. It'd be fantastic. And the fish you see in this photo is from a guy I met, and he was out fishing, and he happened to catch a fish while I was nearby. So he gave me a trout for dinner, and it was the best thing. Because again, fresh food is really rare out there. This trip would have been way less exciting and way less affordable for me if I didn't have sponsors that supported me along. And the biggest sponsor that I had was pretty much all of you that support the Friends of the Boundary Waters. I threw out a call to a couple groups to see if they wanted to support this trip in any way, or if we could partner in any way, if we could raise funds in any way. And Friends of the Boundary Waters was the first one to hop on board. And they're like, not only do we want to partner with you, but we want to fully support you on your trip. And my mind was blown, because you hear about expeditioners getting supported, but like not just like normal people. And it was so fantastic. So through this, we decided to also raise money and raise awareness for like the way, like the education that Friends of the Boundary Waters does, and like getting kids out into the Boundary Waters. And it was awesome. So I don't know if any of you participated or not, but folks raised about $4,000, which is like a bunch of canoes of little kids going out to the Boundary Waters. So I'll support a trip for them and support their guides as well. Other sponsors I have and could have not done this trip without are these fine folks, which is Baffin Boots. They supported me with giving me my ski boots. They're rated for -70. It's their Guide Pro 2. And they're just a 3-pin binding boot, and they were fantastic. Enlightened Equipment supported us with our extra quilt we use. So I use a 0-degree bag, and which does not sound like enough, and it's not enough because it was -40 so many days. So we would put the 0-degree quilt over my sleeping bag, and then Diggins could sleep underneath the sleeping bag, or sorry, underneath the quilt as well. It was a double quilt. Enlightened Equipment makes really cool stuff, really lightweight and affordable. And I believe, oh, it is made in Minnesota. It says right there. Hilleberg, the tent maker, was my tent. They make tents for people who go to North, South Pole, Svalbard, Greenland, to all the Arctic places. And their tents are like pretty much the staple in cold weather exploration. And their tent was chef's kiss. It was perfect. Granite Gear, if you don't know Granite Gear, they're out of Two Harbors. They pretty much support me with all my packs, my zip sacks, my bags, my everything. Of course, Jen and Mike's, like I said, best hot cocoa in the world. The biggest dream of mine is to be sponsored by a hot cocoa company. Ski Pulk, they are the ones who gave me Togo, my sled. Oh, also, sorry, Togo is named after the dog from Alaska who did the Serum Run, saved like all those kids way back when. Which is remarkable, because my Togo, I needed that sled, but I feel like the real Togo was just as much a pain in the butt as my Togo. Ski Pulk, so yeah, their sled was awesome. It was a Siglin Pulk, and I did love it a lot. And of course, the little pig up there with its hummingbird friend is from Middle Valley Farm, and they raise pasture pigs in a very holistic way. They have probably the best bacon in the world. People ask me about my training and how do I train for something like this. Several ways you can go about that. But what I did is I asked Paul Shirky if I could work for his crew this year. And I did this so that I could really just experience what it's like to handle dogs in the cold and make sure I know how to take care of dogs in the cold. He has Inuit dogs and also Alaskans that he borrows. So I kind of got to see both kind of worlds of that, and also just spending all day skiing. That's all we do as guides for wintergreen, as we ski all day in the cold, no matter the temperature. And of course, just spending time in that temperature, because I firmly believe that in the wintertime, Ely does not get above -30 degrees, like hands down. And it was awesome. I think I fell in love with winter like even more. So this is part of the crew that I was a part of this year. And these are some of the dogs, and they're awesome. I love every single one of them. It was like the best job that I could have asked for. And again, just learning how to work in the cold. This was just me after my jacket, I learned how to manage my layers really well skiing. Skiing, you just sweat and you can get so cold right away. So you can see that my jacket is a little frosty. Part of it's from me breathing on it, but a lot of it's from me perspirating. In my perspiration, just freezing on the outside of my jacket. I just want to note that I learned, this is a bad photo because it looks cool, but you shouldn't look like this. I learned, I got a lot better at my layers. The other thing I did is I was awarded the Matthew Henson Scholarship for Polar Explorers. And the Polar Explorers are a really neat group. They take folks out who have a desire to go to either Pole or Greenland and to do a trip as such. And they take you for a 5-day shakedown. So 2 of us were awarded the Matthew Henson Scholarship. And we learned everything from how do you deal with your stove? Because the types of stoves we use kind of always break in the cold. How do you rescue yourself from falling through the ice? How do you best take care of your skis? How do you ski? Some people didn't really even know how to ski. How do you do your layers? How do you keep warm? What kind of sleeping bag do you need? How do you set up these crazy Hilleberg tents and everything like that? So super, super thankful to them. I used pretty much every skill that they taught me out there. So this is the route that we took. Kind of the route that we took. This is the route that was planned, I will say, and maybe not the route that came to completion, I guess. I borrowed this, or I got this from Ty Olson, who skied across the Boundary Waters last year. And he showed me, this is off of CalTopo. He designed a CalTopo map. If CalTopo is a kind of a map design for people who are going out for trips. It's just online. Anybody can find it and use it. It's kind of user-friendly. But he put all of his notes, all of his data on here for me, and I called up the Freedmans. They also gave me information and talked to Paul Shirky and just kind of put all my notes on here. These are not even all the notes I had. This is as much as I could pare it down to put it into a slide. So I started out west in Crane, on Crane Lake. And I don't know if you can see my cursor now, but came down and went back up. There's an alternate route across Canada, but no portage was really open that far west. And came around on Moon and started my way there. And I ended on South Fowl Lake. I had the intention of ending in Grand Portage, but that didn't quite happen, which was okay, but a bummer. You'll hear all about it in about 10 minutes. So the beginning of the trip, a couple of things is that I have a buddy who told me to take a picture of myself every single day. Just kind of and wear the emotion that I was feeling on that day. And I've gone back through these photos multiple times, and some days I look beat up, I look like I just got in a fight with nature and I've just been losing every single day, which I think sometimes is what it felt like. So we started out on Crane Lake, and it was a beautifully blustery morning, of course, as it is nearly every day in the Boundary Waters in the winter, I feel like. And there was supposed to be an open, a snow machine path, pretty much, where snow machines go through, and it's going to be awesome. People are like, oh, there's totally a groomed trail. It's going to be sick. And I was like, yes. Well, I couldn't find it at all. This was before I really knew how to find portages in the winter. It's a whole different bear than finding portages in the summertime. And on my map, where the portage says it was supposed to be, I went into the woods and it looked like there was an old portage there, but nobody had cut it. Nobody had broken it. And I instantly pretty much hit slush right at the edge of the lake. My first bout with slush, which, man, if any of you have ever encountered slush, you know what I'm talking about. And head into the woods. I ended up in butt deep snow and tried to have Diggins cut for me, break trail ahead of me. She was not having it because the snow was way above her head. And Togo didn't want to come through either. So I had to take off my skis. And if you look, I tracked myself that day. And if you look at it, it looks like I'm a mouse trying to figure out my way out of a maze. And finally, I ended up leaving Togo and Diggins and Kongsvold all behind. And I just went just to try to find, I ended up bushwhacking because I lost the trail. And I was so overwhelmed. I was so tired. I tried to take breaks and eat, and did that a bunch of times. Would go back and get those 3 and go ski more and come back and go ski more. And I finally left them for a long time. And Diggins just stays by the sled. She knows what to do. And I always unclip her just in case any hairy animal comes by and tries to eat her. And she just stayed there. And I went for another like half an hour, and I was like, 30 more minutes of this. And if I don't find anything, we'll find a plan B. We'll go back out on the ice. And I finally hit the groom trail that people told me about, and I fell to my knees and I literally started bawling. And this is day one. And it was like a cry of relief and like a cry of, can I do this? Am I even capable of doing this? Like, what did I get myself into? And I was like, I went back to go get the other three, and like, that was it. That's exactly how we entered the Boundary Waters. And it was pretty crazy. And that like set the precedent pretty much for the rest of the trip. We found ourselves on Loon River and Loon Lake, and learning just how to deal with slush and everything like that. With rivers, there's slush popping up all over the place. And this was before I really knew how to identify what slush looked like, kind of on snow. You can't always see it, but sometimes you can see what it looks like. And when you can see what it looks like, just avoid it like the plague, like whatever you can do to avoid slush, just work your way around it. And the other thing that we came across, which a bunch of people told me about, were these really cool motorized portages. I had never seen anything like this before in my life, and they're so cool. You can tell that people kind of live at these places. I like looked in their windows, but didn't see anybody home. But also the snow was extremely deep here. But these were they're like little rail cars. And like, these are the neatest things in the world. It seems like they've been there forever. And the thing about it though, is like, no matter how difficult it was, I mean, like, look at this. This was so beautiful. I remember this night so vividly. And like the moon was rising, and the sun was setting, and it was so quiet. This is on Lac La Croix. And of course, there's nobody else out there. And like the snow was so crisp, and like I happened to find this perfectly down tree that I could make a fire with. And like, I remembered that like, this is a lot of the reason why I like to do this, because there's so much beauty and so much solace, in this place. And I don't want to forget it. And I don't really want to lose that, I don't want to lose that memory. So I spent the whole night drying out my stuff, making a really good meal, my first night of cheesy Tias, and walked around and played ukulele all night. And it was awesome. In the beginning, I also met some really cool people. I met at least 4 dudes at this Forest Service cabin. 2 of them are guides and 2 of them are Forest Service dudes. They fed me eel pout and beaver chili and steak. And I didn't want to leave, because who wants to leave after being fed so many like hot foods? They let me dry out my stuff and let us stay in the cabin that night. And it was really cool to hear about what they do. And they just like supported, they just gave me so much encouragement, just like supported me through it. And one of these guys ended up being a resupplier a few days later. Right after this day I met them, we were right below Curtin Falls. And I think many people have heard about my little whoopsie in the Boundary Waters. So right here, I don't have any video, I don't have any pictures of it, but I fell through the ice. And on this little bit of river here. And I trained to what you do when you fall through the ice. And it went up to my chest. I was getting water. I had spent so much time, it was dark. I spent so much time looking for a portage. I wanted to find the portage before the next morning, just so that I could clear it and get through it a lot faster. So I was tired, I was overheated. And instead of skiing out onto the ice, and this was ice I had already skied on, I decided to boot it. And as soon as I tapped the ice to get some water, I fell right in. And it was crazy. And I felt stupid. A lot of people asked me, was it scary, whatever? I mostly just felt dumb, because I made a rookie mistake that I shouldn't have, and it could have been way more dangerous. Luckily, it was so stinking cold outside. It was minus like maybe 26, 27. Everything just instantly froze. So I got myself out of the water. My phone had gone in the water too, but it was so cold outside that the water froze before getting inside my phone. And I rolled in the snow and shook all the ice off and got back to my tent while swearing. I came up with new swear words. I will tell you all that. And I ended up taking off my upper clothes first. I had some extra clothes I could change into, but I needed to keep on my bottom so that I could go around and collect firewood and build a fire, so I could dry out my stuff. And that's what I did. I dried out stuff until 4 a.m. and went to bed and slept in and started skiing the next day. And our next day looked exactly like this. It was windy and blustery. and we called it a short day. But there's nothing like sitting inside your tent on like a blizzarding day when in your tent feels so warm. So we hung out in here and pretty much just read books for the rest of the day. The middle of the trip, things were getting better. I look a lot more serious in this photo, but like kind of like I know what I'm doing maybe and not so exhausted. And of course, Diggins looks beautiful as she literally always seamlessly does. Things were getting better. We kind of got in our stride a little more. I don't remember where these pictographs are. I can't think of it right now, and I didn't put it in any notes. There's pictographs on this wall. I didn't want to take any pictures of them so close, just to kind of maintain my respect of it. But I wanted to take this picture for my own memory and just the feeling of being at these pictographs and being able to walk up to it, right? So I've heard people talking about being able to see even just like rock formations. But when you're in a canoe, you're on water, so you're kind of just like sloshing around maybe, or trying to hold yourself against the current. But when you're on the ice and you can just walk or ski to it, it was amazing. Like the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I just took everything in. And I did a little recording of like how I felt on my phone, and I just remember feeling like the weight of somebody else's history just kind of like pressing me into the snow a little bit, you know, while looking at these beautiful pictures. And I told Diggins, I'm like, Diggins, like, this is not even our land, and we're just visitors here. And how cool is it that we get to visit and experience a place is someone else's, you know? And of course she doesn't understand because she's an Alaskan Husky, and Alaskan Huskies don't really speak English that well. This moment will forever be trapped in my mind, I hope. Our relationship developed, Diggins and mine, of course, as it always does every single day. On cold days, I would force her to snuggle with me because she has like 14,000 layers of fur to keep her warm. But I just would throw her on top of me and I would read a book and she would promptly fall asleep. And we just enjoyed ourselves, and it was the best. On our 0 day in the middle, which was probably one of the more fun days that I've had, because I pretty much built a dryer for all my stuff. There was a beautiful cedar that had fallen down, and it was dried wood tucked in the woods quite a ways. So I skied in and did all that. And we just spent a whole day relaxing. I read all day, ate a bunch of food, and I had my resupply by the musher that said he would come back out. We communicated. I used a Garmin InReach to connect with the outside world. Garmin InReaches are really awesome because they're pretty much satellite phones. And this is David, he said that he would happily bring me out my stuff, that he just happened to be going the same way that I was going, and he needed to cut a route for a future guide trip that he was going to do. So it was awesome. He also gave us wisdom, right? So meeting people in the Boundary Waters is kind of a sacred thing, because these are people who use the Boundary Waters frequently, right? And he gave me this wisdom of how to reset Diggins and myself so that we could travel faster. Not that I wanted to get the trip over faster. We ran into some issues with Diggins where she didn't want to pull in front anymore because she kept falling into the slush. She would hit the slush before I would, and it freaked her out. A lot of Huskies don't like having wet paws. I think in their minds, it means that they're falling into the water, right? And they're just like cautionary animals. So she would stop pulling. And what I ended up doing for a little while is just having her walk behind me, but she would step on the back of my skis, which is the most frustrating thing in the entire world. It was like having an extra 45 pounds on my skis. And I like did my best to like keep my cool. So having this setup was way better. In this picture, I'm ahead of her, skiing ahead, and she can't step on my skis, but she wants to. And she's also pulling the sled. And we could pretty much double our pace, and it was sick. Met another musher out there. This is Sean. And again, it was like a weird form of trail magic that happened when we met Sean. He happened to be going the same way as me. He caught up to me off a splash, and he's like, "Hey, where are you heading?" I was like, "I'm heading up to Dorothy Malter's, up on Knife." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, me too." He's like, "I'll cut the trail for you." He's like, "Oh, we'll see you on the other side." And I was like, this is the best, because when a trail is broken, you can fly, right? You don't have to worry about slush. He already hit all the slush. The slush was already freezing over because, of course, it's cold outside. And we got to fly that day. We did the most miles we ever did. And it was 12 miles, and it was fantastic. I like renewed and like lit a spirit in my mind. because what happens if you don't have a broken trail is literally this. And what you can't tell is in this picture, I've already done this trail twice, and this is my third time going on it. This may or may not look familiar to any of you. If you look way at the back of the picture, way at the end of the trail, you can see the little Canadian monument or the United States monument. This is Monument Portage, which some people have told me that in the summertime, it ain't that bad, Emily, why are you complaining? And I said, well, there wasn't snow up to your chin in the summer, was there? And you weren't trying to pull 150 pounds across this. It was crazy. But what I ended up doing on portages is I would ski out with a normal ski width with my backcountry skis, and I'd ski back with a bit of a wider ski. And then I would go get Togo and Diggins, and then ski again with an even wider path so that Togo would go through a little bit more seamlessly than normal. And I had to get my brain and change my mental expectations a bit. And I would turn portages into projects because I love projects. I'm such a doer. And pretty much a whole day was an assignment. So I would kind of look to see how many portages we had to do. I'd be like, all right, Diggs, we have 5 projects today and we're going to crush them all. And I was like, this is the only way I'm going to survive this trip is if I just make this into something fun. And we did. I just like to add photos of Diggins because she's kind of cute. Don't you guys agree? More trail magic that happened is I met Ashley Bredemus and her husband. I don't know his real name. I can't remember it, but they call him Stride. So I'm going to call him Stride. And they were super gracious to let me stay the night. We were messaging a little bit. And when I saw her, she like had stuff for me and she's like, here you go. And I was like, actually, can I sleep in your house tonight so I can dry out my stuff? She's like, yes, sure. Like they were super gracious and so kind. And it was, I'm forever thankful for that night. And Arlo, of course, their beautiful pup there in the right of the picture. And they sent me off the next day. The ending of the trip was a little different than I expected. And some of you may already know kind of how the trip ended. We got into this beautiful stride. We could ski so many miles, and I chose to pare down how many miles we did a day. We had a little bit of filming to do, but also I wanted to soak in this time that I had left in the boundary waters. And so we would just like hang out and set up our stuff. This is like maybe 2 p.m. where I decided to set up our stuff, and we just hang out, taking the scenery. Like there was a day like this. This is off of Rat Lake. I like fell in love with Rat Lake, ironically. It's small, but there was no slush on it. So I deemed it the best lake in all of the boundary waters. I've heard it's more of a marsh than a lake, but I can't tell the difference underneath all the snow. But there was one day where there was rime frost all over the trees at like the upper level, on the border route trail. And I just like I decided to sit down on my pack and I think I took a nap. I like just soaked it all in. I was like, dude, man, we should never leave this place at all, and this is awesome. This is everything that I've ever wanted. And on our final days, we had one last resupply. And these 2 are from Camp Minojan. And they not only did they pulk all my stuff out to me, they snowshoed the trail up to Rove Lake, which I'm super thankful for because it's a border route trail, right? And it's like, if you've ever hiked the border route trail, the hiking trail, you know what it's like. And if you've never hiked the border route trail and you are able to, I would highly suggest it. I hiked it several years back, and it is a beautiful hiking trail. And it's one of the toughest hiking trails I've ever done in Minnesota. But these 2 went ahead with snowshoes and they packed down the trail for me so that Togo would not be such a bear and we didn't have to ski it a bunch of different times. And I'm super thankful for both of them. Towards the end, we hit spots where there's snow machines, right? So somebody had tracked out, I have a video of me just like singing praises to whomever this like arbitrary person or people are or is that use this. And we just pretty much flew. This is pretty much one of the reasons why we could, pick up so many miles during the daytime. I was just like, I never knew that the biggest gift in my life would be a broken trail, just ever. This is another thing for like mindsets. So kind of back to the previous slides of like, how do you train for something like this, right? Physical is one thing, yes, indeed, because pulling 150 pounds is a big deal. You can't just like get off your couch and just go, do something like this. The biggest thing, I think, even more so, because your body will become fitter, is learning the mental aspect of it. How do you spend so much time by yourself, number one, in frustrating situations day after day? And how do you kind of keep things going, and how do you keep things not too depressing when things get difficult? So I would turn things into projects. I would turn portages into projects, or difficult lakes into projects, and everything became a gift. Everything became a gosh darn gift. If it was a cut path, it would be a gift. If there was no slush, it would be a gift. If it was an apparent slush pool, it would be a gift. Like, everything turned into something that I felt could have been detrimental, or could have been way worse. And I loved it. Any hard packed snow that I could ski on top of, like a huge gift, hands down. Or being able to ski across really thin ice. There's some times we skied across maybe a half inch of ice, and I would just keep saying to myself, I'm lighter than a loaf of bread. If you've ever seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, and just kind of scooted my way across it. It was awesome. And yeah, and then, so since we had so much time, we'd spend time in the tent. And with the Hilleberg, they have these beautiful vestibules. And on the lakes, there's 2-3 feet of snow in the lakes. And inside your vestibule, you can cut out, you can pretty much home design. I was a home designer every single day on this trip. I redecorated my house every single day, and it gave me so much joy. Cut out a little spot for your feet, make little cupboards and shelves inside your vestibule, make little countertops, make sure you have a nice little snow pile every day. And it was kind of a weird reward where I was delighted every day to do this. You can see I'm sitting in my tent, my feet are in the vestibule, and I'm sitting like you're sitting in a chair, instead of having your knees kind of up by your ears while you're trying to get stuff, putting your boots on and whatever. So I'd sit there after remodeling my home every day, and I'd sit there and play ukulele to Diggins. She wasn't very fond of me playing ukulele, but sucks to sucks, buddy. You're the one I'm forcing you to come on this trip with me. You have to come with. So this is a video, but there's no sound. There's no need for the sound. For some reason, I decided not to take a picture of the Pigeon River. So maybe, yeah, we'll go like this. And I mostly just want to show you what oops, sorry, hang on. Oh, maybe not. I just want to show you what the pigeon looked like. It's so unfortunate that I didn't, okay. It's so unfortunate I just didn't take a picture. I think I was so flabbergasted at the end that I just decided not to take a picture. The whole pigeon was wide open. There was a portage off of South Powell, and it was the gnarliest portage. I thought the Monument Portage was crazy, but this portage off of South Powell, it's on the Canadian side, is mad crazy. Mostly because there's so much balsam everywhere, and the balsam, I felt like I was in the Wizard of Oz, with the trees. I felt like the balsam were reaching out their little grubby, little needly hands and pulling Togo, just ripping him down hills, because I'd be skiing along on a very flat plain, and then just all of a sudden Togo was down a hill, and I don't know how that even happened. And also on that portage, the snow was so deep and so fluffy that I couldn't ski across because it was so hilly, and I couldn't walk across because the snow was so fluffy. So I literally crawled on my hands and knees. Me and Dickens, we were pretty much like this on our little, well, she was on her paws. I was on my hands and knees, and we were pretty much like a dog sled group, pulling Togo along, so that I could distribute my body weight. We did all this for hours and hours. It took 2 breaks pretty much, so several hours. And I didn't hear any rushing water at all, so it's sweet. I needed to find the trail again, and I left Togo and Diggins, of course, as I always do, and went ahead, and I found the Pigeon River, and it looked just like this, wide open. And I didn't know there was a workaround at the time. Ty had sent me a message later. He's like, oh, there was a workaround, that it pretty much included roads around the dam, just to get past all this. Maybe the pigeon, it was frozen further down, but I felt like when I fell through the ice before, right, days back before this, I felt like the river was pretty much telling me, you know, like be more respectful to river, be more respectful to ice and rivers, be more mindful. Don't feel like you're going to conquer everything, right? As humans like to do. And when I got to the Pigeon River, I felt so much peace. You know, South Fowl is outside of the boundary waters at this point. I felt so much peace about being done, that this was where I was supposed to end. And the Pigeon River was telling me this is where I was supposed to end. And it was okay. And the downside of all this, though, is I had to do that stupid portage again. I had to go all the way back and redo everything I did. And it was crazy. I once I got back to South Powell, I laid on the snow and like pretty much just kissed the snow. I've never been so excited to see a lake before in my entire life. And ended up skiing, called up one of the folks from Minojan, and she happened to live nearby. And there happened to be a snowmobile trail that led right to South Fowl, and we could ski it super easily, and there was a road access. So if any places to be stuck by open water, this was the perfect spot. And I think it was meant to be. And it was, I know this seems like a hard way to end, but having the Pigeon River being open right there was a huge gift to me. It was way better than skiing most of the Pigeon River, being stuck in the middle of it, and then having open water with no way around it in the middle. This was a way better option. So I hung out outside of Grand Marais for a night and got to rest. I got to sleep in. I didn't tell anybody that I had finished except for people in my family that needed to know where I was for my health and safety. And the people from Minojan, they had a tiny home I could stay in, and we slept and we ate. We got to commune with people, and I ate. They brought me to dinner, and I literally ate like 5 burgers that night. It was, I wish I could have made my stomach bigger so I could have eaten more food. I was so hungry all the time. So I made new friends, and they happened to be going to Duluth, and they hitched me a ride home, and I got home, and I began my re-entry. My re-entry this year looked a little different than it did last year. I took an entire week off, a week and a half off, I think, from social media. I didn't do any media interviews. I didn't do any podcast interviews. I stayed home. I hiked with my dogs. I baked bagels and cookies and brownies, as I love to do. And I started to write, and it was really good. People kind of ask why, why do you do this? Like, why spend time alone in the wilderness for a month? And it's like, I feel like the kind of human that I am, my life is really busy on the outside of the boundary waters. This is the way that I balance out my life and come back to the center of who I am, and come back to the center of what I believe in, and knowing that these spaces are, extremely sacred, and I want to experience them. And I learned that about myself, that I valued these places. And the biggest thing I think I learned about myself is that I can do so much more than I ever thought I could. And so much more. I don't know if Diggins feels the same way, but if she were a human, I think so, because she overcame a lot of her own fears. And I learned that I don't exactly know if I can even articulate. I've talked to so many people about this trip, and I still don't even know if I can articulate exactly the why behind how come the boundary waters feels this way to me. I know it's not just me that feels this way, but I know it's tons of other folks that are so in love with the boundary waters. And I'm super thankful that I was able to partner with Friends of the Boundary Waters and give a voice to it in the wintertime, to let people know that it doesn't just disappear in the wintertime. It still exists, and it still needs all the love we can give it. So I think there's a few questions that are popping down in there. I think Maya, if you don't mind being the moderator for that'd be awesome. But thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Emily. And yeah, just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A feature, and we will get to as many as we can. Let's see, let me go through a few of these here. Somebody was wondering, what was the most difficult part about traveling with Diggins, and if you encountered any wildlife that Diggins had to react to?
Such good questions. The biggest thing is I made a mistake with feeding her too much lard. So just future for anybody who travels with their dogs, their fat to protein ratio is very mathematical. You cannot feed them too much fat. So she got a little sick for a couple of days and didn't want to eat. And that was the scariest thing. If my dog wasn't going to eat, it was going to be crazy. I am notorious for not seeing any wildlife. We saw the most vicious wildlife we saw was a fisher beautifully and cutely pouncing across the snow. So it was like a dream of mine to see a whole pack of wolves, and I didn't. Rough.
Yeah, maybe good and bad.
Yeah.
Somebody wondered, are you going to write a book about the trip?
This one, I think I will try. I will try. Writing's so hard, you guys. Writing's so difficult. I will do my best. I've started writing. So yeah, we'll see.
Great. Just jumping through the questions here. David was wondering, how often did you consult a map, and how did you check your direction if you couldn't see the sun?
Oh, right. Such a good question. I didn't even talk about that. For this trip, I used, they were also a sponsor, I realized now that you say that, thank you. Gaia GPS was super helpful. So I could use it based on my phone. I pretty much use a digital map the whole time. I had paper maps with me, but I just use a digital map. So I could download my CalTopo map that I made pretty much onto Gaia, and just use that. You can use it in airplane mode. And I charged my phone pretty much throughout the whole day. I charged a battery bank. I had a solar panel on my sled that I would just keep in the direction of the sun if the sun was out during the daytime. So I could charge my phone at night.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. And kind of, I don't know if you were able to track this. Something I was wondering, like, do you have an account of the total mileage that you did when you consider, like, doing portages 3 times or going off in search of trails and coming back? Do you have a kind of an overall? I know that added a lot of mileage, probably.
No, I've never even, no, because I would never want to think about that at all. No, that's a good question, but I had to put that out of my mind.
That is very fair. A few different people have asked about the photography, if you're using just your phone camera or brought like a nicer professional camera, and how you manage that.
Good question. I purchased a new phone right before this trip because my old phone, had such a poorly cracked screen. I was so afraid that if I fell into the water, the phone would be broken for sure. And I'm super glad I did buy a new phone because, whoa, look at that, I fell in the water. I just have a Google Pixel 6. Yeah, and that's what I took photo and videos on. It's a good camera, man. It's my first nice phone camera in a long time. So yeah, Google Pixel.
Great. Yeah, and I know, probably a lot of folks here have followed along on your Instagram, and there are a lot of very exciting pictures posted there. Yeah, so it seems like it worked out. Sorry, just trying to sift through these questions here. Were you ever fearful? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, sometimes, such a good question. I don't know if I was fearful of a thing, mostly just like a second guessing, like, is it possible for me to finish this? There was a lot more doubt on this trip than there was than there ever has been on previous trips. Something that you get used to, which is kind of scary, is just hearing the ice pop underneath your tent. So I slept out on the ice pretty much every single night that I was out in the Boundary Waters. And you just get used to the ice just thundering beneath your tent. But other than that, not too much.
Do you have advice for someone who wants to try solo camping or backpacking, but is feeling nervous, and especially as a woman, is what they're asking?
For sure. Yeah, I always recommend, if you have a backyard, at least try to sleep out by yourself in backyard and keep your phone inside the house. Don't bring your phone with you when you do this, because that will kind of give you a sense of what it's like to really kind of be alone. And then after that, go to a spot where you can kind of inch your way out, if you have the time to go to where lots of people camp, like a campground, I think is what they're called. And then you can go on trips that are, like on the Superior Hiking Trail, we have the Superior here. There's a lot of really well-groomed campsites, and I always felt pretty safe in those areas. And you kind of meet the nicest people. The biggest thing I can say is you kind of just have to go out and do it. I don't really have, you could have somebody hike out with you and then, make that split decision right there and be like, I'll stay here by myself tonight, but it's kind of up to you just to kind of take the plunge and do it. And let somebody know. It also helps to let somebody know where you are. and what your plans are. That's kind of the biggest thing. Just make sure somebody knows, and if it makes you feel super comfortable, just text them every 5 minutes and you'll stop texting because you'll be having such a good time.
That's great advice. I like that. A few people were wondering if you were regularly journaling during this trip.
Oh, I'm a terrible journaler, but somebody gave me the tip, and I will use this. I will do this from here on out, is to just voice record my day and just talk about my day to a voice recorder. Way better than journaling, especially in the wintertime. And my handwriting is so crappy. This was a way better way for me to record how I did. And since I have a Google phone, it'll transcribe it for me, which is awesome.
That's great. Have you gone back and listened to kind of your journal recordings?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's kind of crazy. I mostly just sound really tired because it's at nighttime.
That makes sense. That's fair.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think
I did see a question about somebody asking about my showering bit, which is
a
good
go
question. I use wet wipes while I'm not able to shower. The only thing is that you have to figure out how to warm up your wet wipes because they're frozen probably. And I would do that several times in a week just to stay clean. A lot of bad things can happen if you don't practice hygiene, especially since I wore the same outfit every single day for a whole month. And then, yeah, I took a shower at the Bread and Mrs. and I took a shower at Gunflint, at the lodge at Gunflint. Other than that, yeah, wet wipes are pretty good.
Great. Yeah. I see someone is asking, other winter trips that people have heard of had moisture buildup in their sleeping bags until they were super heavy, and wondering if you had that problem.
Not so much my sleeping bag. Whatever's on top will have moisture on it mostly. And so that would be the quilt. I did my best to dry our stuff out, pretty much, get stuff breathing as best as I could. So like packing the tent down, I'd throw the quilt and the sleeping bag on top of the tent, especially if it was sunny in the morning, it would air out and do that. And then I would dry stuff by the fire as best I have. Not recommended for your down stuff, of course, but as best as you can, kind of get it close to that warmth. But you do get a lot of frost on the inside of your tent. It's pretty much like a whole weather system inside your tent. So just learning how to deal with your ceiling frosting over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems like a challenge.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, I just skipped by a question and then it moved away from me. Do you have any ideas for what's next? Are you planning something for next winter or have any dream projects that you're working on?
Next winter, I always tell people, I put this in a very, very heavy asterisk. I don't have anything planned yet, but I said that last year and this is where we are now. So, there's still plenty of time to do something, right? So I don't have anything planned. It'd be nice for me to be able to be home and experience a Duluth winter. Might pop up to Wintergreen for a little bit and kind of poke around with them for a little bit. But my dream goal right now is to ski somewhat across Greenland. That'd be awesome. There's a lot more training that has to go into that. That is not a trip you just go and do on a whim. So that will take many, many years for me to train and figure out how to do. But I would love to do another hiking trip and get off some skis for a little bit. So maybe hike the Appalachian Trail in the wintertime, of course. No, there's no other time for me to do it.
Well, that'll be exciting. I'm sure lots of folks here will be following you in your adventures. Kind of one question that I wanted to end on, somebody was asking how they can continue to support you and your work. And as part of that, I want to just put a link in our chat here. This is the link to the fundraiser that Emily was doing for our No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters program, which gets kids from the Twin Cities and Duluth up to the Boundary Waters, teaches them about the Boundary Waters, pays for trips. So I will put the link in the chat here in just a second. And we will also send out a follow-up email that has this link as well as a recording of the presentation.
Sweet.
Great. So Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Emily, for a great presentation. I feel like this has really inspired me to up my winter camping game, and I'm sure many people are also feeling inspired about your trip and your presentation. So we're grateful to you for sharing that with us and appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, lots of fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, look out for a follow-up email from me, and have a great afternoon.